It's all about to become real. In just over 4 hours, the Canadian men's national team will kick off the 2022 World Cup against the Red Devils of Belgium, the world number 2. But as we've learned with any match in this tournament, they're all winnable, as Japan just beating Germany. And, just the latest World Cup upsets, anything can happen. And regardless, it's going to be an incredibly special moment for the country. So we are bringing you a special edition to the CanPL.ca newsroom. Mitchell Tierney here alongside Charlie O'Connor-Clark, and we'll also be joined by Alex Gonge-Ruzik on this historic day for the first half of the show, and then a little later on get into some audience questions as well with producer Benedict Rhodes. But first, gentlemen, 2 p.m. Eastern today, Canada will be playing in a World Cup match. Charlie, has it set in yet what this moment will truly mean? And when do you think it will finally dawn on you that this is happening?
It's been like slowly setting in. It's been growing. Every time I'd see pictures of Canada at training, like when I saw Atiba Hutchinson at a podium doing a World Cup press conference, that was kind of a moment like that for me. But it still isn't going to fully hit home until I see these players walk out in the stadium and I see, the national anthem being played over the speakers at Arahan Stadium. Like, that is going to be the moment where I'm like, this is actually happening. Because we've been talking about it for months and months now. And we've known it's coming. But it's still hard to fathom like what it's like to actually be at the party. And now that that's about to happen, I don't think I'm ready for it, man.
AGR, are you ready? I mean, it's been a great tournament so far, as we said. There's been a ton of unexpected results. Certainly, with what we just saw being up there among them, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, there's been a couple of them. Is Canada maybe primed for another upset? And you wrote a good article about this on OneSoccer. What are some of the ways that Canada can potentially get at Belgium today? Because this Belgian side's very, very good, but as with any side, they've got flaws.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's been weird tournament, I guess. I don't know if it's the early hours. It almost feels like some of this stuff's like fever dream. Like, did Morocco really draw Croatia? That happened? Like, I wasn't like sleepwalking through that.
Dude, that was so long ago. Oh my God.
feels like yesterday, but also doesn't feel real. Like, so a lot of this the tournament, like a lot of this stuff, it almost doesn't feel real, but also it's been great. Like, it's been some good soccer, it's some high level, competition. It's just kind of wild that you've enjoyed this just like you would any other tournament. Now, it's day 4. Canada is going to play it. They're on the last slate of the game. They're going to come in and play against Belgium. And it's just surreal to see that. And it's kind of been building towards that all week and every day. Like, it's closer. It's closer now. It's all of a sudden like, okay, Canada's going to go out and do that. And I think just hearing the anthem is probably going to be the most surreal moment of it all, because that will kind of just cement it. But from there, it's going to be fascinating to see Canada go out and take on this challenge, because I think if this World Cup's shown anything, is you can go out and play. I think a lot of these countries that have gone out and play have been rewarded. I think you look at how Morocco, how just high octane they were, how Saudi Arabia, they were aggressive, they weren't parking the bus, how Japan as well, they play some great soccer. A lot of these teams that are getting these quote unquote upsets, which it feels almost wrong to say, because it's you look at the overall balance, it's been a while now since a lot of these teams have, maybe non-traditional big teams have been pushing, but we're finally seeing them execute and play and do so at a high level. And it's not just, okay, throw 8 players behind the ball and that's how you're going to win. And I think that's exciting if you're Canada, just because we know they're so tactically flexible. That they've got a lot of, weapons in attack. They play a bit of a different style. And I think against this Belgian team, that's going to be key. I mean, again, Belgium, you look at Kevin De Bruyne, he's going to be able to cause, a lot of havoc. You got Eden Hazard, you got a lot of attacking options, but that back line it's slow and old. There's no better way to put it. Slow and old. And then the players that are, they play very high up the field, and they got some good options. Like, they got some great young options between Bootface and Arthur Theat and Zeno de Baas. They're all young. Between those 3 I just mentioned, they have 9 caps. It's going to be on Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld to shoulder a lot of the load. They can be good in possession. They can have moments in the air, but they're going to be slow in transition. They struggle statistically in transition. Canada has to attack that. They have to also be good on set pieces, as Charlie has noted, they do have a slight edge statistically over Belgium on set pieces, as I've found. So if they can do well in transition on set pieces and then try to limit Belgium's, capacity to destroy teams in open play, they have a shot.
Yeah. This Belgium team is an interesting one to me because I should preface this by saying that they are an extraordinarily good soccer team. Like, they're very good. They're second in the world for a reason, and they have some unreal talent, including Kevin De Bruyne, who might be the best player in the world. The thing, like, I think that they do have a bit of that kind of now or never energy, though, because they've been called this sort of golden generation for years now, right? And they've been close at tournaments. They went to the semifinals last time. They've had moments, but they've never quite pulled it off in a tournament, like on the world stage when it really counts. And they don't have anything to show for this incredible, generation of talent that they have. And I think that the sense that they go into this tournament with this being, maybe the last chance for the Vertonghen's, the Alderweirelds, even some of the guys up front. Like, I don't know if Romelu Lukaku will play. Well, we don't know if he'll play in this World Cup, but we don't know if he'll play in another one. And a lot of these other talented players around the squad, there is that kind of sense of this being their last chance. And I think to an extent, heading into this World Cup, trying to squeeze the last little bit out of that generation might actually have prevented them from bringing some of those younger players into this squad and bringing them through earlier. And they might have been better off if they'd been able to start that transition a little bit earlier and maybe have a bit of a younger squad heading into this tournament, or have those guys with a little bit more experience should they need them. But there are like tons of those ways that Canada will be looking at. I don't know if you guys saw the friendly they played against Egypt a few days ago. They got beat in pretty much the exact ways that Canada wants to hit them, right? Like, there were balls over the top, over that back line. The second goal for sure was like kind of reminiscent of Jonathan David's goal in Honduras, right? Where it's just a long ball from the defense, like straight to a guy who brings it down and goes up and scores. The first one was, Kevin De Bruyne giving the ball away at the top of the box, which probably isn't going to happen very often, because like that's a collector's item. But we've seen Egypt do it, and I think Canada will have seen that game and been like, that's exactly what we want to do. Now you look at Belgium, and they're probably thinking, well, that's kind of the wake up call we need. I think that's literally what Vertonghen said yesterday. That's a wake up call they need, to not play like that and to not allow those same things. But again, it's going to be an interesting game, man.
Yeah, it certainly will be. And another thing we've seen from a number of these teams is just, especially maybe the time of the World Cup, it being so close to the European season, and the maybe lack of preparation compared to what there usually would be with all these players coming into camp late compared to a normal World Cup, is some of these sides have taken a bit of time to get going in these matches. And that's going to be incredibly important. I think that benefits Canada, obviously, a side that maybe for some of the squads been together longer, but also, a team that this is going to be a big moment for them. No player on this roster, obviously, has ever played in a World Cup match before, and some of them have played in big European games, that sort of thing. But AGR, how important is the start for Canada? Because we've seen something, I was keying in on this week, is the fact that in those high-profile friendlies they played, be it Uruguay or Japan, the worst part of the match for Canada probably was the start. They allowed the early free kick against Uruguay, and obviously they got scored on there. That route one ball against Japan, cuts them open in an uncharacteristic way as well. How important is it that Canada, comes into this match and maybe some of those key veterans settle the boys down ahead of, this game?
Yeah, I mean, the start's going to be massive, just because you can weather the storm and you can just avoid as much disaster. That's going to give you, a chance. The further you go into a game, that's where you can really catch, teams by surprise. You don't want to go down behind an early hole. I mean, as Saudi Arabia and Japan showed, it doesn't, it's not, I guess it's not a fatal blow, but you don't want to rely on that. You want to, stay as much on the, in an even game state as possible, so you're not having to chase, a 1-goal deficit or even a multi-goal deficit. So the start's going to be huge. I think we're going to want to see Canada come out and really control that. What's been fascinating to see in this World Cup is just the intensity of these games. I don't know, it feels like a lot of past World Cups early on, sometimes the games can be a little slower, but one, I guess, consequence or result of this being mid-season is that the intensity on these games is high. So for Canada, that they'll have to be ready for that. I think they're a team that typically likes to respond to that sort of intensity. They seem to play at their best when that sort of intensity is there. So hopefully they see that and come out strong and come out with the the intensity that they maybe lacked a bit against Uruguay and Japan, where they're almost like starstruck a bit to be on the field with both teams. They kind of came out timid and they're like, oh, we're here, like, let's take our time and really settle in. No, as you're going to see, you don't have much time to do that. You have to come out ready to rock, ready to go, ready to you go in there with your fists up, so to speak. So for Canada, they're going to have to come out strong with that intensity, just because it's something we've also noticed throughout this tournament, that the pace of the game is very high, and something that Canada's going to have to look to settle. And, the nice thing is if you come out strong, you can kind of dictate the tempo. Teams also that go out and do that are always going to, do well. They're going to dictate the terms of the game and play it the way they want to be played. And given Canada's so flexible, they can certainly toy around with Belgium a bit in ways, and how they'll try to go out and frustrate them.
Yeah, the start of this game is actually really interesting. I kind of want to hear what you guys think about this, but it feels like to me there's a bit of a sense, at least in maybe in international senses, that the book is out a little bit on what Canada are and how they want to play. Like, they're going to want to defend. They're going to want to try and hit you in transition. They're maybe okay not having the ball that much. I wonder if, if John Herdman's brave enough to say for the first 5-10 minutes, we're going to high press them. Like, we're going to go at them and try to catch them by surprise and not give them what they expect. I don't know if that's a dumb thing to do against a Belgian side that can probably tear you apart a little bit. But I wonder if, like, it's at least crossed his mind that, Belgium, it's even what they've said, like what Martinez said yesterday, what Vertonghen said yesterday, they know that this Canada team wants to hit in transition and hit on the counterattack like that. I wonder if maybe they try and hold on to the ball a little bit more, or try and high press a little bit more than that.
Oh yeah, sorry. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think one thing that's become clear is that everyone knows Canada's speed. Everyone knows their ability to hit in transition. I don't think some people have picked up on the tactical flexibility, at least outside of Canada, what we've seen during World Cup qualifiers. So if you're Canada, I'd say be ready to play in possession for the first 15 minutes. If you're Belgium, on the flip side, why would you want to come out, guns a-blazing if Canada can hit you in transition? Why not, completely throw a wrench and go the first 20 minutes? Belgium sits deep and lets their center back just absorb. And if you're Canada, that's okay. Be ready for that, because I'm sure if you're Belgium, you look at the Uruguay and Japan tapes, what do you see? Canada, making turnovers and giving up goals in transition. So if you're Belgium, like, why not flip the script a little? And I do wonder if teams are going to use that for periods of the game to try and frustrate Canada. I think that's the sort of level that we are at here tactically, where it's less like CONCACAF, where teams are very defined styles. Like, you're not going to find Honduras change for the life of them. And that's what's good about them. They're so committed to what they do. Costa Rica, et cetera. What they're going to do before they step on the field. Whereas at the World Cup, these are top teams with a lot of tactically versatile players. I'm sure if you're telling Kevin De Bruyne, okay, Kevin, you're going to run a little more in transition, he's probably loving that. He's probably tired of having to break down low blocks every week at the club and country level. So I do wonder if that's something we maybe see on the flip side to kind of counter that. And I think Canada, they've had their practice breaking down low blocks now between the last few games. So maybe this is a chance for them to take what they learned and try to apply that, should that happen.
Yeah, and I think, with John Herdman and his approach, like, there's always some kind of wrinkle he has up his sleeve, some kind of little tactical thing that, maybe we weren't expecting, be it throwing out like a box midfield against the United States or anything like that maybe, we weren't expecting from him. So as much as, it seems slowly like we were starting to figure him out, there might be something today where he goes completely in a different direction, and be that personnel or just a strategy that he wants to implement in this match. There's a chance. I mean, there's probably no match as the Canadian men's national team manager that he's had more time to think about and ponder than this one. So, with that, hopefully doesn't come overthinking, but probably comes some kind of unique strategy that we're going to see from Herdman today. So I'm very fascinated to see what that is and how it plays out for Canada. But before we let you go, AGR, I just wanted to get your thoughts, because you were one of the few, maybe, the people who were up at 5 a.m. to watch the first match of this group, that being Croatia's 0-0 draw with Morocco. And I think probably a surprising result for some, but just an indication of how close and difficult this group is, and that there's certainly no pushover team within this group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly surprised that Morocco did well. I just think in the research I've done leading up to this, like Morocco is a slept-on team, and you look at their qualifiers, you look at the results over the last year, they've been trending in the right direction. They have some great underlying numbers, and then you just add in the fact that this was all this without Nasser Mazraoui and Hakim Ziyech, who they've just brought in. And Ziyech, it's wild to think that if it weren't for a coaching change, he wouldn't be at this World Cup, because he was one of, if not the best player on the pitch today, arguably between both sides. Like, he was excellent down that right side. Just so whenever he'd get in the ball, he'd break lines. He's just such a incisive, dangerous player. Obviously, Mazraoui might be out at this point. We'll see if that sub he got subbed off early with a bit of a hip knock. We'll see if that's precautionary or something that will worry. Morocco's a legit team, and I think that was interesting to see how just dynamic, how solid they were in midfield, despite going up against one of, if not the best midfields in the world. Their back five, plus including goalkeeper Montreal-born Yassine Bounou, were so good. They were mopping up everything in the air. Croatia, hardly had a chance other than one in the first half. They're solid. And then Croatia is Croatia. The scary thing is with Croatia, Morocco played excellent. Morocco, had patches where they looked dominant, and Croatia still were never in doubt of at least getting a point. Like, they gave up nothing despite that. They were just so good defensively, which is what they've proven over the last year. There's a reason why they've beaten France, beaten Denmark, had one of the best defensive records in the world. And then, in the attack, when their midfield gets going, they can just be so effortlessly dominant. They can get forward. The only thing you do wonder with Croatia is, do they lack a bit of a number 9? Andrej Kramaric can be dangerous, but he faded in and out of the game a lot. And, their wide threat, Borna Sosa was their best wide threat, but he was often so occupied with defending Hakim Ziyech that he didn't get forward as much as they wanted to. But even then, Croatia were just effortlessly solid in that. Morocco played their best game, and Croatia looked rather comfortable out there. So what this result seals, I mean, tactically, we can see what those battles mean as the games start to roll in. But I think at the very least, this might be the most competitive group. It just feels like everyone has such fine margins, because the game was played at remarkable intensity. Both teams were battling, and it just felt like destined for a 0-0, which shows how fine the margins were between both sides.
Good. So both teams are quality. That's what you want to hear as a Canadian men's national team fan, that every game is going to be difficult. But I think it is also important that, this does seem like a competitive group, and obviously there is the opportunity there with everyone kind of canceling each other out for some surprises to happen. And that's obviously what I think we're hoping for from today for Canada. But Alex, thank you so much for joining the show, and always appreciate your time, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, we'll now transition into question time. We reached out to Twitter and Instagram for a number of fan questions, just to, learn what people are interested in going into this match. And we'll bring on producer Benedict Rhodes now to ask some of those questions. So Benny, take it away, man.
Yeah, we'll start with one we have in the chat here is about watch parties. The person in the chat wants to know specifically about Toronto, but I know from coast to coast you have lots of watch parties. So what do you guys have to say about that one?
There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, there's too many to list specifically, but you can check out the Voyageurs social media, Canada Soccer social media. There's a couple of Carlsberg ones. There's one at the Samsung Experience store at the Eaton Center. Mitchell is going to be at Derby House, which is going to be pretty lit. But realistically, it seems like, I know that there's official watch parties, but also it feels like pretty much every bar in Toronto and probably most cities in this country is going to be kind of packed for this game. I've never seen Canadian soccer kind of take on this sort of attention before. I hear people talking about the game all the time. It sounds like school kids are taking out of class, or all assembling in gyms to watch. If it's Canada playing hockey at the Olympics or something like that. So I'm sure you can find somewhere to watch, but there are official ones that you can find on Voyageurs and Canada Soccer social media.
This one I just made up in my head, didn't come from social media, but on that note, kids watching in gyms and stuff. I heard a discussion yesterday about how, someone described it as maybe the new generation's version of the Summit Series. Do you think this World Cup could have that much of an impact if Canada plays well and everyone is tuned in like that?
Oof. I don't know. That's a difficult one just because I don't know. The Summit Series has like so much nostalgia and obviously the added, geopolitical situation around that that made it a much bigger thing than it was, and it being hockey. But I don't know if I'd go as far as say the Summit Series, but this could be like Canada soccer, at least on the men's side, like kind of Summit Series where I don't think anything's going to be the same after today, after this match. And it already hasn't been with them qualifying for the tournament. But if they go out there and perform well in this group against some, teams that everyone will know, seeing in the recent results in world soccer, like it's going to turn heads, not just in Canada, but around the world about the quality that's here with this team. So today's a game changer. Today's worth celebrating for so many different reasons. And I think that's the biggest thing. Summit Series comparisons or not.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that there's probably a lot of soccer fans, even in Canada, but definitely around the world, who know who Kevin De Bruyne is, but don't know who Alistair Johnston is. And they're soon going to know who Alistair Johnston is, just because he's going to play at a World Cup, and he's a very likable,
Kevin De Bruyne.
endearing player. He might 2-foot Kevin De Bruyne, and that will be like that would be a big moment. But like people already know who Alphonso Davies is, though. But they're going to learn about Stephanie Stacchio, and maybe Tejan Buchanan or whoever else, and that's kind of part and parcel of playing on this stage. Like these players get that kind of attention and understanding even in your own country.
Next up, you guys touched on this a little bit just now with Alex, but from John Mar 15 on Instagram, does Croatia have the best midfield in this World Cup?
It's close. They're up there. They're certainly up there. Like the guys that they have in there, Modric obviously speaks for himself. He's one of the best midfielders in the world. There are a lot of decent midfields in this World Cup. Not France's anymore, but it would have been there if they had N'Golo Kante and Paul Pogba in there as normal. England's midfield too. Bellingham and Rice was pretty filthy against Iran. That's definitely up there. Brazil, Argentina are always solid in that respect. Spain's midfield is good too.
That takes them out of the equation.
That is a huge knock. Anybody with Fred in the team is like, oh, way down there, no chance. I'm interested to see what Spain's midfield looks like in this 11 o'clock game in a few minutes here against Costa Rica, because they have a lot of talent in their midfield. But Croatia is certainly up there, probably top 5 or even 3 at this World Cup, I think, Mitch.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add on that. Again, Spain's a intriguing midfield for me. Germany obviously just went down to a defeat, but have a lot of depth and quality there. So I think that there's a lot of sides that maybe have the claim to the best, but we'll see how this Croatia side operates. And again, it's a midfield that has so much quality in both sides of the ball. They can go forward, they can defend incredibly well, they can hold on to the ball, they can concede possession, they're comfortable in all different situations, as Alex so definitely said earlier. So again, if they're not the best midfield at this World Cup, like they're up there, and that's the challenge that Canada will face on Sunday.
Dude, so does Belgium, to be fair, actually, we should say.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we shouldn't.
Brenna, Witzel, Tielemans, whether it's Carrasco or whoever else is in there. Yeah, they're also good.
De Bruyne alone. Also Uruguay. Uruguay's another side that I think I'd throw.
That's who I meant to mention. Oh my god.
They're up there. They've got a lot of quality between like Valverde.
Any midfield with Fede Valverde in it.
Yeah, exactly. Torreira. Like there's some quality in there as well. So there's some good midfields at this tournament, as you would expect at a World Cup.
Yeah.
Charlie, you mentioned guys like Alistair Johnston, Tejan Buchanan. How much do clubs look at World Cup performances when scouting players? Johnston's been talked about, a guy maybe you go to Syria or go to Europe. How much do you think the World Cup will affect his sort of scouting?
Mitch, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I less than it used to be, but I'd say still a lot. I mean, not just from a performance standpoint, like seeing what these guys can do, against world-class opposition and top talent, but even from a marketing standpoint, you look at selling a player and then being like, we bought Samuel Piette, who just scored against Belgium. Like that sells things, to fans in a way that other things don't. And I think probably with the, emphasis placed on analytics now and more of the bigger term or bigger picture view taken by a lot of these clubs, there's less vibes-based purchases, but those still happen. Those still absolutely happen. So I'd say less than there maybe used to be when, it was a lot more word of mouth within this soccer world, but it still happens certainly, and it's still a massive opportunity for these players at least to catch the eye, and then these clubs do their further deep dives on these players and realize, wow, okay, this guy is incredible. We should probably look into this guy. So yeah, I think it does a lot.
Vibes-based purchases, yeah. I think the thing, like every World Cup has one or two players, usually not on one of the big teams, on one of the kind of middle tier or lower, like surprising teams that just really stands out as a player that nobody really knew about before. I think it's been James Rodriguez before, it's been Keylor Navas, it's been plenty of players. The thing that's interesting to me about this specific World Cup is how it being in November and December, there's a transfer window immediately after this in January, and teams are kind of immediately back at it. They don't have like a full kind of scouting season through the summer or whatnot. So I can kind of see there being more panic signings off a World Cup. And by that, I mean, most of the players here will be, and the signings will be players that are on a club's radar in many senses. But once you see them kind of play on the biggest stage, maybe you've been scouting them in MLS, and you were kind of interested, but now you see them and they play really well against a top side at the World Cup. That kind of maybe it's the last thing you need to convince you to sign them. And I think there will be players that stand out that, aren't as known, especially to European clubs, maybe coming over from North America or South America or one of these leagues. I think it will happen, especially in this January window where some team always does something crazy in January, something desperate and insane, and it often doesn't work out, but sometimes it does. But yeah, I think players definitely feel like there is an element of, if you play really well at this World Cup, that might be the springboard for your big move.
Basically, play well, and Real Madrid will buy you for 40 million.
Yeah, 100%.
Just rapid fire. Just give me a name. Who's gonna be the vibes-based signing from Canada to go to another team?
Come on, Miller.
Ooh, that's good. Oh, darn, rapid fire. You took a good one. Vibes-based. I guess I'll go Alistair Johnson. Very similar.
Yeah.
From Colin Freebury on Twitter, I know we talked about this a little bit, Charlie, before the show, is what's the expected temperature to be like in the stadium, and maybe how much do you expect the weather to be a factor, if at all?
Not at all. I expect it not to be a factor at all. This game, especially this first game for Canada, is at 10 p.m. local in Qatar, in an air-conditioned stadium. So I think they've been pretty clear so far that these stadiums are pretty much all at about 24 degrees Celsius, and I don't think that's really been much of a factor throughout some of the midday games. Maybe it's a little bit toastier. The air conditioning has to work a little harder, but I really don't expect it to be a factor. These will be pretty pristine conditions for world-class football.
Do you think there's like a stadium dad that really cares about what the thermostat temperature is and is like constantly like trying to keep it at a rate so it's not as expensive on the power bill?
I really hope so.
We'll go to you for fashion.
I think you froze there.
Oh, you froze a little bit. We're going to need to hear that again.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We got a question from Jason James 1216 on Instagram. Is who belts out the national anthem with the most passion?
It's got to be Mark Anthony Kaye, no?
I think so.
It's usually Mark Anthony Kaye, but I don't think he's going to start.
Right.
So I'm going to go Steven Vittoria. He's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Alistair's also really good. But I think Vittoria, there's a lot more of those shots of him just like face like wide, mouth wide open, just absolutely screaming. I'm sure they all will be, though. I'm sure that John Herdman is going to like tell them, you guys are going to scream this thing when you get out there. So I'm looking forward to that.
I got two more questions for you. The first one is, how did Canada qualify for the 1986 World Cup? How much do you guys know about that? And the only other time Canada, of course, has been to the big dance.
Well, they top. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, do you know? Because I can.
No, you go for it.
Okay, so basically what happened was, obviously, first of all, the '86 World Cup was in Mexico, so they qualified automatically. They weren't part of the qualification process. It used to just be the CONCACAF Championship was the World Cup qualifying. There were two spots. Basically, Canada topped their group. They were in a group. There were three groups of three. Canada topped it. I think they were with Haiti and maybe Guatemala. But then you go to final round of a final group of 3 where you played every team home and away. The U.S. weren't in it because they didn't top their group. I think they lost to Costa Rica. So, essentially Canada just needed to top that group. And then George Pecos scored in Newfoundland, and they went to the World Cup, and they didn't score a goal there. But, they were there. They were part of the show. And I would say that this qualification process was significantly more difficult and more impressive. And this Canadian team is also stronger than that one was, with no disrespect intended to, one of the pioneer teams of the game in this country.
Last question for you guys. Would Canada beating Belgium be as big an upset as Saudi Arabia over Argentina?
I think rankings wise, technically no, but the fact that Saudi Arabia has been to multiple World Cups, I think they've been to 6, and they have that experience. Like Canada coming into their first World Cup in 36 years and then taking out the world number 2 in a match, like just optically would be unbelievable, I think, and would be a incredible upset. So, as much as we're all in this Canada bubble right now where we really believe in this team and we've seen what this team is capable of, like on a world soccer standpoint, I think it would be just up there, if not bigger, in terms of the I guess shockwaves it would send through the soccer world if Canada can pull off something today.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of putting it. Like maybe in an on paper talent disparity sort of sense, it's probably not as unlikely an upset as Saudi Arabia beating Lionel Messi's Argentina. But yeah, as you said, Mitch, Saudi Arabia have been at World Cups recently. They were there in 2018. I think after they got shelled by they got pretty badly beaten by Russia in that first game, but then they played pretty well. And I think their other 2 games, I think they played Uruguay and then they beat Egypt. So they have that sort of experience that Canada obviously doesn't have. Not to say that anybody would expect them to be competitive with Argentina, but I think we know how good Canada can be. A lot of the world doesn't. And I think if Canada even just shows well against Belgium, maybe gets a point or something at it, that changes a lot in the perception of the sport in this country around the world.
Yeah, definitely does. And I think we'll wrap things up there. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So thank you everyone for your questions. Obviously,
before we go, let's do lineup predictions.
Ooh,
for Canada.
All right, sounds good. Benny, do you want to take it away, and we'll see if we have any changes. We'll start with Benny.
We'll see.
And, we'll see if anyone has any disagreements.
All right, so James Pant missing goal.
I knew that was coming.
So Milan Borjan, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We go for the sort of back 3, I guess, with Miller, Victoria, Johnston.
Yeah.
Left to right, Adekubi, Estacchio, Hutchinson, Hoylett.
Mm-hmm.
And then David Buchanan, if Davies starts.
Yeah,
okay.
I think
he's nailed it. Yeah.
I think that's my 11.
Yeah,
I think that's my 11. But I might expect Buchanan in the wing back role and Hoylett a little further up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The good thing is you have that incredible flexibility now where it doesn't really matter because Hoylett can play wing back now. You can constantly switch on the fly, and that's another obviously underrated aspect of this team. But yeah, I do think that's personnel wise the 11 for sure.
Yeah. Who's the first guy off the bench?
Ooh.
Is it Oso? I think it's probably Oso.
Yeah.
Oso or Kone, depending upon the match situation.
Maybe.
I do think Kone appears in this match at some point.
Yeah. I am excited to see Jonathan Osorio come into it though.
I think so too. Big game Oso. Big game Oso.
He loves a big game. He loves a big stadium. He loves a stage. So that'll be fun as well.
Yeah, certainly will be. Well, speaking of the big stage, action obviously gets back underway very shortly here with another CONCACAF side, Costa Rica, taking on Spain. In their first match to the World Cup for both sides. So we'll let you all get back to the football now, but appreciate you taking some time on this historic day to listen to this show and ask your questions. And thank you to Alex Gonge-Ruzic as well for stopping by and giving us some excellent analysis as well. And also for being the one to wake up at 5 a.m. So we actually knew what happened.
I did too, man. I was there.
And no one believes you. But fair enough. Okay, so the two of you woke up. To be fair, I was up. I just wasn't awake enough to have any sort of tactical beyond
Yeah,
it's 0-0.
I didn't
This
book
is
a
good.
lot of what was going on in that game. But
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just over 3 hours away now from Canada playing at a World Cup. So as Charlie wrote, make sure to just take some time and enjoy and savor this moment, because no matter what happens on the pitch, this is a pretty special day for the sport in this country, and I think we've all worked pretty hard to get to this point, and watched a lot of bad soccer. So enjoy the good soccer that's going to be on display today. So we'll have plenty of coverage of that as always over at CanPL.ca. Christian Jack's been providing us with some great updates from Doha every day. We have in-depth analysis of all the Canada matches as well. So on behalf of Benedict Rhodes, Charlie O'Connor-Clark, and the entire Canadian Premier League newsroom, I'm Mitchell Tierney. Let's make some history, Canada.